Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again, continuing our WrestleMania series. This time, we are working on WrestleMania 16, also known as WrestleMania 2000. This was took place in Anaheim, California, at the Arrowhead Pond. This is the second Mania at that location. The last one being WrestleMania 12. The announced attendance for this event was 19,776, and the tagline for this WrestleMania was a McMahon in every corner. And this obviously referring to that main event, so a bit more on that later. Um, Per usual, we'll go through every single match. We'll give you our rating and thoughts, and then overall rating at the very end. So I know we're technically still in the Attitude Era, but this Mania very much, for the most part, had a very different feel to it, just in terms of pure roster size and talent. The following talent, just to kind of avoid doing this in the actual matches, the following talent made their WrestleMania debut matches, and specifically say matches because we've seen a couple of these guys, the Edge and Christian. We've seen them as Brood members. In a match with Big Boss Man, I'm sure you recall coming down from the ceiling. But following talent made their WrestleMania debut matches. That is Kurt Angle, Jericho, Benoit, Edge, Christian, the Hardy Boys, uh, and the Dudley Boys. So come on, this is kind of the kind of turning of a lot of these talent coming over from WCW, and a lot of these kind of finally making their mark on the main roster. So all of this, and then no Taker match. We don't have to worry about a Taker match to complain about. So, with that, let's go ahead and get into the very first match of WrestleMania 16 or WrestleMania 2000. That is Big Boss Man and Bull Buchanan going up against Godfather and D'Lo Brown with Ice T, because why not? KP, thoughts on the opening match of WrestleMania 2000, and feel free to call it whichever you want. I think I think more widely known as WrestleMania 2000 is the correct bit.
I'll just probably flip and flop, and you probably hear me saying, both variations at some point through this podcast. Um, yeah, I mean, this opening contest, it was pretty decent, to be fair. It was quite a fun match. I think you had Godfather and, all the ladies on the outside, sort of like, adding a little bit, sort of like a different dynamic to the contest. Whether that was a distraction for the in-ring superstars, the fans, viewers, whatever. You could say probably all of that, I guess. But yeah, just generally speaking, with the whole Godfather stuff at the start, it just had like a bit of like a fun vibe to get things going, and as a way of just getting the crowd into it and getting them ready to go, sort of thing. But the match itself was pretty decent. It wasn't too bad. Like in terms of opening contests for WrestleMania, I wouldn't say it was like up there with the best of the best, but generally speaking, it wasn't that bad either. It was a little sloppy in parts, but it was a good length match. It had a bit of time, and it had a decent finish as well. So just generally speaking, I think that it wasn't like one of our worst ones. We've seen a lot worse, of these opening contests throughout these WrestleManias so far. So but onto how the match basically went down in towards the end. You get D'Lo Brown. He sets up for his frog splash, but he gets pushed off of the top rope by Buchanan, and he then gets hit by a big boss man slam, and then a leg drop from the top rope. And that awards the victory to Bossman and Buchanan in the end. But that was after, like I said, a little bit back and forth. Godfather had a pretty decent hot tag at one point. Crowd were into it and stuff. And yeah, just generally speaking, Bossman and Buchanan did a decent job of, being the heels on this one, just looking strong and yeah, just ruining the party, I suppose, really, to get things going. But yeah, it was decent. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. I had fun watching it. But like, obviously, it's not like, one of my absolute favorites, but it also wasn't terrible either. So just a nice little opener, just to get things going. I think it did its job.
Yeah, so it appears that you like this match a little more than I did. Yeah, I just felt like this was a very kind of meh match. It felt like, this was a match you'd see on, today, like a Raw or SmackDown episode. Like, it didn't really do much. For me at least, it just felt like, as you mentioned, the Godfather obviously being extremely over. So that felt like that was, a match to get the crowd in. So I understand the point of it being here. Just in terms of a lead off or kickoff match for Mania, just felt like it didn't quite live up to what it should. So yeah. And a couple things I did know was Bull Buchanan, very impressive talent. Some of the things he was able to do, like he jumped to the top ropes. Um, from the ring. I thought that was pretty impressive. And did a couple other maneuvers. I was like, oh, this guy's a pretty good talent. But at least I don't recall of hearing from him. So I was, curious. Maybe something didn't go right with him. And you calling Godfather and the ladies is a very a nice touch. The actual name that he refers to them as are his hosts. Just a completely different era, and more on that later because we just see. Yeah, we'll get to that later, but yeah, for me, this just one didn't cut it for a Mania kickoff match. I gave this one a 5 out of 10. Just kind of felt like it was there. Didn't really do much outside of the Godfather being super over and involved with the fans. Just didn't really add much else. Getting into the next match, we have a very different match. The first ever hardcore battle royal for that WWE Hardcore Championship. The members, including Taz, Viscera, Mean Street Posse, Hardcore Holly, Michinoku and Tanaka, Headbangers, Acolytes, and Crash Holly, who is the current champion. The rules of this match are pretty simple. One think we really haven't seen that I can recall as of recent. 15-minute time limit, and essentially you can have 3 new champions throughout the match, or you can have 15 new champions. So very interesting hype here, and a very interesting and topical ending. KP, what'd you make of it?
Yeah, this one was about baby steps for me. I think just generally just understanding the rules of the match first to begin with. That was obviously something that I had to adapt to. Then just generally just, getting a feel for the flow of it and, going through and just seeing the absolute chaos and carnage. Watching the action unfold. It was all quite an interesting experience for me. I'd never, seen this match before or even really heard about it either, I don't think. So it was completely fresh, brand new. I went in with this not knowing anything about it, so that was kind of good, I think, really, to sort of get like a really fresh opinion. And my description of this one was, it was chaotic, it was messy, in a kind of good and bad way, I guess, in parts. Yeah, you can sort of like treat that how you like. I also described it as an absolute train wreck in parts, but it had a unique vibe and it was kind of fun. So, I guess that's that counts for something. There was so much going on all the time. Like, you couldn't keep tabs on everything. It was just too much. Like, there was obviously so many people involved to start with, and everyone was doing their own thing, sort of thing. Especially with baking trays. I don't know why. I guess there was a clearance at like the local Walmart or something like this. But they had about I don't know how many headshots from baking trays they had here, but it was like probably a good 50% of the match was with weapon attacks we used with bacon trays. So yeah, I just found that really funny and just amusing that they were so ever present throughout the whole matchup. Like, they fits throughout the start, the middle, towards the end as well. It was just crazy, but it was entertaining, and like I said, it was kind of fun. But it was very here, there, and everywhere, and I'll get into basically how the match just flowed, throughout the entire contest. So Crash Holly, like you said, he started off the champion here. He gets pinned by Taz. Viscera then pins Taz. Funaki pins Viscera. Rodney pins Funaki. Joey Abs pins Rodney. Thrasher pins Joey Abs. Pete Gas pins Thrasher. Taz then pins Pete Gas. So Taz won it twice in this matchup now. And then Crash Holly pins Taz before Hardcore Holly pins Crash Holly to win the Hardcore Championship and to be the one who would hold the gold at the end of the matchup. A little controversial finish, though. Hardcore Holly, he smashes Crash Holly with a jar of sweets sort of thing that he picked up from their commentary, I believe. And he lays out Crash Holly. He's completely out of it. But the referee, so when when the count happens, the referee like counts the 2 but doesn't count the 3. And I like watching it at the time, I genuinely didn't know what had happened. Like I was watching, like I was completely aware of the situation, but as to what was the decision, I literally had no idea what they decided until they eventually announced it. That actually, he didn't count to 3, but Holly did win the title, Hardcore Holly. So it was just a really weird and strange way to end a contest. But yeah, I don't know if the referee just made a mistake. He forgot to count to 3. He thought he did. I really have no idea what went down in the head of the referee, but it made for a very strange finish. I mean, I guess that sort of ties in with how the match sort of vibed up until then, because it was a bit of a train wreck in a lot of the area. So yeah, I guess the finish sort of matched the vibe. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. Like, I did think it was fun and it was hectic and it's chaotic and crazy, but there was just a lot wrong with it as well, and you couldn't really keep up with everything because there's just so much going on. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know. You could take it either way, really, but yeah, I don't know. It was one of those weird matches, I think it's safe to say. This is an interesting one, Nick. What did you make of it? Like, general flow of it, the finish, everything involved. Why so many baking trays?
Yeah, I think a weird match is a great way to describe this one. But yeah, I like the format and the kind of style of it. That was very unique, and as you mentioned, getting accustomed to the rules, I think, was just part of it. And so in my notes, I didn't specify, or go so specific as far as you did, but the baking trays. But in my notes, I just put so many headshots. And so yeah, the baking tray mentioning of you having doing that, that gave me a good chuckle as well. But yeah, it felt like every time you saw someone, they were getting smacked with the pan. So yeah, perhaps you're onto something. Maybe there was a nice sale there in Anaheim. But yeah, 10 different champions, or 10 new champions, if you will, throughout the contest. And I had to go look at the ending because I was like, that was so weird. Like, even the commentary team and Crash and Hardcore, you could tell, not really knowing what was going on. And then they went and grabbed the belt from Crash to go put on Hardcore Holly. The plan finish was for Crash to not get the 3 count, so that's why the ref didn't count to 3. The plan was to have Crash retain through all of that, which is kind of wild. And I guess the timer of the match, and I think it might have been Vince. At least that's what I've seen. Vince was in trouble for the whole bit, but might just be because that was his planned bit. Regardless, obviously the ref in our eye is the one that always gets the blame. But yeah, he was told not to count because that clock was a bit off. But the planned finish was to have the clock expire in between the 2 and the 3 counts. So very small margin for error there. But regardless, they did end up going with Hardcore Holly. But yeah, just like you said, a very fitting end to a chaotic match. So I give this one a 5.5 out of 10 as well. You certainly can't say it wasn't entertaining because it very much was. This kind of gave me remnants of the 24/7 title more recently, obviously, just because of how many and how quickly those title changes were. But yeah, I think the hardcore title and 24/7 title are no longer, and matches and chaos like this being a good indicator, while entertaining, definitely not sustainable in the grand scheme of things. So with that, continuing the hardcore kind of attitude era shenanigans, this match has Al Snow and Steve Blackman with McCheeserton. No, you're sounds like something your 4-year-old child would make up. One of the most attitude era things I think I've ever seen. Going up against TNA, continuing that attitude era theme with a debuting Trish Stratus. KP, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, the weirdness sort of carries over from the previous match, I suppose. Cheesy McCheeserton, yeah, that was a thing. Apparently, I'd never seen this guy before in my life, and yeah, then seeing him, being brought down the ramp and stuff, and just accompanying, Al Snow and Steve Blackman to the ring. It was a weird sort of start to it. But yeah, in terms of the match itself, yeah, not great. It was poor. It was slow. It was dull. It just didn't hit anything for me. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what was the end goal of this. It was just a weird flow to a matchup that seemingly had no right to be on WrestleMania. I don't know. I guess it was all this gimmicky cheese stuff that was going on with, the fact that the team was called Head Cheese and they got a cheese mascot on the outside, and we got T&A, who, obviously have their own sort of, unique, funny name going on there. Yeah, in terms of how the match went down, Albert, he slams down Blackman before Test then hits a diving elbow drop in order to get the victory. After the match ends, Al Snow apologizes to Blackman, before then bringing Cheesy into the ring. He then says that they need to cut the cheese before he then smashes his mic against Cheesy McCheeserton, laying him out, and then they hit an assisted leg drop to end the segment. So, I don't really know what the main goal was here, but it was a weird vibe to it. But yeah, T&A got the victory. Test and Albert with the victory on Trish Stratus' WrestleMania debut. Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't a great match. It was pretty poor. So I gave it a 4 out of 10. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what more I can really say about it. It just had a strange flow and didn't really vibe with me personally. Just felt really sluggish and yeah, not high quality for sure. What did you make of this? Well, especially Cheesy McCheeserton. How did that not stick?
How did it not stick, and how is he not in the WWE Hall of Fame? I think those are two very, very key questions here. As for the match itself, yeah, unfortunately, another just kind of meh match to start off Mania, and just like that, things not looking too hot for WrestleMania 16. So, yeah, I thought the match itself was decent, but the fact that Cheese McCheeserton made it past creative and got here to the Mania stage of all places, just kind of shake your head like, and shrug your shoulders. The attitude era, right? Eh? But yeah, 5 out of 10 for me. And like I said, just not a great way, to kick off Mania with the, matches we've seen so far, 3 in a row, rating around the 5 area. So with that, we happily turn the page to have our first decent match of WrestleMania, and this is the infamous TLC match. Edge and Christian going up against the Hardy Boys, going up against the Dudley Boys for those World Tag Team titles. KP, obviously this is a huge moment, probably sparked a lot of interest for you. Your favorite wrestler being Edge in this match. What are your thoughts on this one?
Oh, it's a classic. It's an absolute classic in terms of these WrestleMania matches, and you go back and have really fond memories of watching again. Yeah, this isn't the first time I've seen this contest, and this was revolutionizing tag team wrestling, I suppose, on the WrestleMania stage. We hadn't seen anything, to this magnitude yet, really. And the triple threat tag team ladder match, it holds up. Even to this day now, it's still absolutely incredible, and it's a great, fun, entertaining watch from start to finish. It's fun. It's crazy. There's so much going on here. Loads of fun spots, broken tables, ladders being used constantly throughout the matchup. Just general, organized chaos, I guess you could say. Because that's essentially what these should be, right? It all works. You got these 3 teams, just in the ring together and just putting on an absolute masterclass. They made a thing out of this. This was the first installment, I guess we could really say. We would then go on to TLCs later on, and obviously just completely up in the game there and then as well. So yeah, it just the first installment of these next level matches. It was a great way to start. Just going up to that sort of level. Edge Christian, Dudley Boys, Hardy Boys. Yeah, it was just top notch stuff. Edge, he gets to a point where he shoves Matt Hardy off of. There's a table that's sort of like balanced upon the top of 2 ladders, and Matt gets sent off there, crashing down into the ring via Edge. and the two sort of like balance on this table that are on top of the ladders, and they just grab the the hanging tag team championships to get the victory. But yeah, I mean, there was so much stuff. Like I said, it's one of the iconic images with Jeff Hardy, the ladder on the ramp on the entranceway, and he just hits the swanton bomb onto Bubba Dudley, who is lying on the table ready and waiting for it. Superplexes off of the ladders. We had crazy spears attempts in this one. Yeah, it's just so much, and everything just worked out. There wasn't anything wrong with it as such. It's just a really fun, entertaining matchup, and a great way to revolutionize tag team divisions. So yeah, I give it a 9.5. This is one of my favorite matches that we've seen so far. Extremely high quality, so much fun to watch. Everything just worked. Yeah, I mean, what's there not to like about it, right? It's just a bit of a masterclass. So yeah, put a smile on my face, and was a great time watching it once more again.
Yeah, my memory not being the greatest, I always kind of off the top of my head, I can never recall which spots were from this TLC match or the one that happens at 17. And I think widely 17 is the favorite of most. But yeah, I'm looking forward to going through 17, which obviously will be the next one we're doing, to kind of get a fresh take on which one I think is better. But obviously, this one is great. As you mentioned, the Jeff Hardy spot, the Edge jumping off the turnbuckle, hitting a spear. I believe it was Jeff on the ladder. That was a great spot as well. The table on top of the ladders for Edge and Christian to win the tag title. Like, this match was just great, and a very fresh welcome change to WrestleMania so far. Yeah, so yeah. I won't hit on it too much more. I think you hit most of the key points I had, but yeah, this just revolutionized tag team wrestling and the TLC match, making it what it is today. I think without this moment, maybe it doesn't. Maybe tag team wrestling isn't as important, and or the TLC match. Lots of matches since try to pick up that same magic, and you could argue maybe they haven't. So it just goes down. As you mentioned, you've seen this match many times, as have I, seeing the two of them at 16 and 17. Just always place a special place in my heart, as I'm sure it does yours as well. So yeah, looking forward to 17 so I can get a fresh take on which one is better, but obviously both very, very good. So I gave this one a 9 out of 10, and so happy to see a page turned to get a good match in WrestleMania. We're gonna go ahead and quickly turn the page back to the next match and get an absolute dumpster fire. I think that's a fair description for this match. KP, Terri with Fabulous Moolah going up against Kat with Mae Young, with Val Venus as the special guest referee in a cat fight. It's great to see how far we've come with the women's wrestling. I think we've hit on that a few times throughout this WrestleMania project. Interesting bit though, before we get into your review, this was the only one-on-one match of WrestleMania 16, and in WWE and or JR's defense, he did say before this match started, if you're a fan of technical wrestling and a wrestling purist, this match won't be for you. And if you're a fan of the star rating, this won't be for you. Of course, the King loved this match, but KP, how did you like it?
I'm going to try and remain professional and keep my composure for this, because this was an extremely difficult watch. You touched on it then. It's so refreshing to see how far, women's wrestling has come since this, because I think up until this point, this is by far the worst WrestleMania match that we've seen, and it's not even close. Could this be the worst WrestleMania match of all time? I don't know. We've still got a fair few WrestleManias to go through, but this was by far and wide just an absolute horrid state of affairs. It was god awful. It was just terrible. I don't, yeah, like you said, JR did warn us. He said, it's not going to be technical, and it really, really wasn't. Obviously that was the case. It was just two women who were throwing each other about, and kissing Val Venus. I guess that's basically the summary of this matchup. Even the rules, like the ruling of this match was if you're on the outside of the ring, you lose. Like it wasn't even you have to go over the top rope. It was just if you're on the outside, you get thrown to ringside, you're out of it. You can't leave the ring. Basically, is the ruling here, and it's just a sloppy mess. So Mae Young, she gets involved, which causes Val to like pull her away from both Terri and Kat. And then Mae Young just kisses Val Venus, sending him into the corner. This lasts a good minute and a half, probably, that sort of time. It felt like that anyway. Maybe it wasn't quite that long, but it felt it, that's for sure. Whilst at this point, Terri and Kat, they're just sort of going in and out the ring, like throwing each other out and stuff, and just swapping positions and things like that. And eventually, Terri has Kat at ringside and gets back into the ring before Val Venus eventually escapes the clutches of Mae Young. And he turns around and just sees the situation and gives Terri the win. So, yeah, I don't know. It was just a weird, horrible, terrible match. I gave it a 0.5 out of 10. The reason I gave it 0.5, it was something to watch at least, I guess you could say. But it was just horrible. It was just a mess. So yeah, it wasn't a wrestling match, was it? Can you really describe this as that? It just wasn't it. It was a showcase of two ladies at WrestleMania for the guys, right? That's essentially what this was. So call it that, I guess. Yeah, 0.5. Nick, anything else to add? It's a weird one, right?
Yeah, one of those train wreck bits where you just can't look away, and maybe the reasons why you can't look away aren't the best. Yeah, definitely one of the worst Mania matches of all time, at least in our review so far, and I can't imagine many matches giving this one much competition. Typically, I start a match at 2, so it kind of works its way up or down. But typically, very rarely goes under 2. I think maybe 2 or 3 matches tops. Through the first 16, I've given less than a 2. Of course, this is one of those. I gave it a 1, which maybe I should have gave it that 0.5. But yeah, I gave it a 1 simply because it was, for better or worse, a match you couldn't look away from. I was like, what am I watching? But yeah, one of those moments, the Attitude Era had a lot of pros. It definitely had a lot of cons as well, and this match was one of them. 1 out of 10 for me. And with that, let's swiftly turn the page. We have the Radicals, which typically does include Eddie Guerrero, Perry Saturn, and Dean Malenko. It also includes Chris Benoit, but he has a match later on this evening. They are going up against Too Cool and Chyna. A very interesting dynamic in this match. KP, what'd you make of it?
Sort of had like a familiar vibe to that of the opening matchup, just generally speaking of like how it flowed and the quality that was throughout it. I thought that it was a decent enough match. It all basically just proved to be purposeful for setting up Chyna to get her hands on Eddie Guerrero. There was a whole lot of that going on throughout the matchup. The early stages to the mid stages to the late. It was all centered around Chyna wanting to get her hands on Eddie, and eventually, obviously, it did happen. But yeah, it was a while before that would take place, and it was sort of like a cat and mouse game between the two of them. You've obviously got Scotty, Hotty, Grandmaster, Sexay, who are also there, and then the other guys, the Radicals, Dean Malenko and Perry Saturn. So yeah, there was a whole lot going on. 3 versus 3 tag with Chyna being a legal competitor here against the guys. It's pretty unique. You wouldn't see this in modern day, but for someone like Chyna, she didn't look out of sorts with it. She fit like a glove, really. To be fair, probably even at times more technical than some of the guys were being. So yeah, I mean, I thought this one was kind of fun in parts. Scotty, Hotty, Grandmaster, Sexay, they bring a lot of charisma and just energy, good vibes to these matches. A little bit of comic relief as well, I guess you can say, with the way they sort of like waltz around the ring and some of their moves. But yeah, just generally speaking, it was just kind of interesting, kind of a fun matchup. So Chyna pins Eddie Guerrero eventually. After getting her hands on him, she lands a Gorilla Press Power Slam before following up with a Sleeper Slam, and that would be enough to get that 1, 2, 3. But it was very much a game of chasing Eddie Guerrero up until that point, and tags, stopping that from happening, and Eddie just getting out of the way, and yeah, there was a whole lot of dodging and evading from Guerrero, but eventually Chyna did get her way. So yeah, I thought it was decent. I had a good enough finish as well. So yeah, Chyna looking strong. Can't really say that's a bad thing either. She's just that kind of girl who at the time just fit in with the guys, and just a testament to what she could really bring to the to the matches. So yeah, I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. I liked it. I thought it was decent enough. So yeah, not too bad, to be honest with you. What did you make of this one, Nick?
Yeah, Too Cool was one of those gimmicks that definitely reeked of the Attitude Era, but definitely one of the better Attitude Era teams, if you will. Some of the teams they had in the Attitude Era were just from the naming component alone, which is god awful. But Too Cool was one of the better ones in my opinion. Obviously, have the dancing and the worm that was very iconic, and a wrestler on the roster today I think does something a bit similar. So yeah, I think they were obviously entertaining, but I think they were also decent in ring talent as well. Going up against the Rascals, who obviously are three very talented and technical individuals as well. Having seen the debut of the three of them, including Eddie Guerrero, was very very nice to see as well. Yeah, China held her own. She didn't feel out of place at all. And I thought this was one of the better matches we've seen. Obviously, as mentioned, lots and lots of tag matches and multi-man and woman matches throughout the evening, and I think this one was one of the better ones up until the ending, where China kind of had a wardrobe malfunction there with her pants. She could tell she was very self-conscious of that, and that kind of, I think, yeah, it dropped the quality a bit at the end there. But up until then, I thought this was a pretty good match, and some decent storytelling with that of China and Eddie Guerrero. So I did give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, definitely far from the worst match of the night, and some decent storylines and angles here. With that, moving on to the next match, which has the Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla, Chris Jericho, going up against Chris Benoit, going up against Kurt Angle, who at the time is both the Intercontinental and European champion. This match is simple: two falls. First one being for the IC title, second one being for the European title. And little fun bit there. This is the first time the IC belt has changed hands in 8 years on the biggest stage of them all. So for me, these are three of my favorite wrestlers in WWE history. So just looking at the match on its face, this one had pretty high expectations for me. I'm assuming about the same for you, KP. Obviously, our style in wrestling that we enjoy most is the technical grabs, and these three guys can do it amongst the best. What did you make of this one?
Yeah, I thought this was really good. I think just generally the type of match that it worked out to be. I quite like the match type. So being the first fall going to the Intercontinental Championship, and then the second fall going towards the European Championship. I just genuinely think that with double champions they could do this a lot more often, really, because we do see double champions in WWE. I mean, literally, the likes of Sol Ruka now, who's got 2 titles in NXT. Roman Reigns, not that long ago, he had 2 titles. Tag teams as well, like the Usos and Sami and Kevin. And obviously, that went on for a while, holding 2 championships. I think just genuinely just handling those type of situations in this way is a really good way of doing things. And it just creates a really unique dynamic. The individual who wins the first championship still has an opportunity to win the second one, but obviously then so do the other two. So I just really like it. I think it's a really good way of doing things for sure. And yeah, just generally speaking, the match itself was pretty good. I mean, you put these three in the ring together, and they're probably going to deliver a really good match. And that's pretty much what they did. It was very competitive. Lots of near falls, very very close moments here and there. Just got this sort of the interest peaked for me. And yeah, just with Angle not being involved in either pinfall as well, I thought that was that was a pretty cool way of doing things. Obviously it sort of like further just makes him more annoyed by the situation, not being happy about the match being given in the first place and the way it sort of like was organized, obviously against his best wishes there. And I thought he sold it really well afterwards, when he lost both titles. So Speaking of how that sort of went down here, so in the first fall, we would have Chris Benoit. He would win the Intercontinental Championship. He would go for a diving headbutt onto Chris Jericho before pinning him to win that IC title. And then in that second fall, we would have Chris Jericho hitting a lion salt onto Chris Benoit after he'd missed the diving headbutt, and that would give Chris Jericho the win for the European Championship. So yeah, just thought how those two, went out there, the two falls. You get the two challengers, winning those championships. Credit to both men doing very well and seizing the opportunities when they came about. But made for a good viewing as well. I quite liked it. Nick, what did you make of this triple threat matchup? I know one of your favorites are in this one, and from an in-ring perspective, anyway. Just generally speaking, lots of quality in the ring. But how did you thought it fared? I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. How high did you rate it?
Yeah, 3 of my favorites. Just generally speaking. So, like I said, I had high expectations for this one, and honestly, it lived up to it. I think I've definitely seen this match at least a few times before. I don't think this is often referred to as one of the any of the talent's best, but even their even not their best is still pretty damn good. So this was no exception. Very, very technical here from the 3 guys here, and it's just great, very pure wrestling match. Referred to as JR, that cat fight wasn't one of those. Well, we did want to see one of those. This is the one to watch. I gave this one an 8 out of 10. Like I said, not their best. But even when it's not their best, it's still pretty damn good. So, like I said, 8 out of 10. Definitely one of the better matches of WrestleMania 16. Getting into the next match, we have yet another tag match. This time has DX with X-Pac and Road Dogg with Tori going up against Rikishi and Kane. So just on paper, Kane with Paul Bearer, by the way. Just on paper, this one feels like a bit of a mismatch. And the result of this one definitely shows that as well. This wasn't a squash match, but it wasn't far from it. Obviously, Rikishi and Kane are nearing main event talent at this point. And DX is definitely towards the end of their kind of popularity. So much so with the way this match went, I had to go look. Was this the official end or the start of the end for DX with how quickly this match went? Essentially it is. Obviously don't have HBK anymore, and Triple H is very much busy with other things, so this kind of ended up being the kind of the start of the end for DX. They ended up no longer being around in August of 2000, so not far removed from this one was the end of DX, and honestly this match pointing to that being the case. So as for the match itself, KP, what'd you make of it?
I don't want to sound too, repetitive here, but just had a weird feel to it, It was all over the place. Pretty low quality. I guess it was kind of fun in parts, but just generally speaking, it was very, very short and essentially just built up for one situation throughout the matchup, and that was Rikishi. So he had attempted to hit Tori with a stink face very early into the matchup, and he didn't get it done. So he sort of went on his rounds. He'd hit, Road Dogg and X-Pac with stink faces throughout the contest. And then eventually, towards the end, he would finally get his opportunity. I thought that was pretty much like my main sort of comment here. That was like, based on what this match was building up to that big moment there. The crowd popped for it, so obviously they wanted to see it. But Paul Bearer, he ends up throwing Tori into the ring, which sort of like gets her in position. And then she gets shoved into the corner by Kane. And then that's when Rikishi gets opportunity. So he goes for the stink face. He hits that. But then Kane is obviously dealing with the actual in-ring competitors, and he tombstone pile drivers X-Pac in order to get the victory here. But like I said, like you adjusted to, it was a pretty short match. It wasn't very long. It was very quick. So yeah, didn't really have an awful lot of quality. Like I said, it was just very much built up towards that one spot, and it just felt a little bit like that was the main purpose here, which was a bit odd. But yeah, I guess like you said, maybe a mismatch. Rikishi and Kane, you two very top talents at this point. So, yeah, just a weird kind of vibe to it for sure. And then the weirdness doesn't sort of end there because Scotty Too Hotty and Grandmaster Sexay, they come out to celebrate with Rikishi at the end, and the trio dance in the ring alongside a chicken mascot who is believed to be Pete Rose. And there's been a bit of an ongoing thing between Pete Rose and Kane over the last couple of WrestleManias leading up to this one, and it always results in Kane getting the better of Pete Rose, and this one was absolutely no different. However, after the dance, Kane shoves the chicken into the corner, but he doesn't realize that it's not Pete Rose. Pete Rose comes from behind, and he attempts to hit Kane with a baseball bat, but Rikishi just very easily and nonchalantly just stops him from doing so. And that allows Kane to turn around, see what's happening. He just chokeslams Pete Rose, and then Rikishi hits a stink face on Pete, and that is the end of this entire segment. So the weirdness didn't stop. I did warn. So it was very much into this one as well. And yeah, it didn't, I don't think it really did anyone any favors. It was just a quick little thing, maybe a bit of comic relief, I guess, with Pete at the end, but I don't know. The end goal for this one, not entirely certain, but yeah, DX definitely on the downwards decline here, and obviously, as you mentioned, disbanding not too long after this, so not one of their fonder moments and memories. I would say for sure. I give it a 3.5 out of 10. Like I say, it just wasn't full of quality. It was pretty poor and didn't really do anything for me. Nick, how did you rate this one? Was it as bad as that in your opinion, or do you have a bit of a saving grace?
Yeah, no, really saving grace. Like we said, Kane and Rikishi obviously top talents, but when the main focus is around someone's asking put in someone's face. No disrespect to Rikishi, but this is the Attitude Era. These are the things we come to expect from that era. And like I said, it feels like we're slowly kind of trying to turn the page from there. Obviously, we're still in that era, but and matches like this kind of show just that. Like Attitude Era has its pros and cons, as we previously mentioned, and if you've watched wrestling, but this unfortunately just didn't do much. I think it made Kane look good, and pretty much it. I think, and then the aftermath shenanigans with Too Cool and Rikishi, that's an iconic moment. I've seen that video probably more times than I can count. It's a great vibe, and their song in general. It's just very nostalgic for me. And then Pete Rose once again getting bested by Kane. I have to feel for the guy, but I'm sure he was all for it. Clearly a big fan of wrestling. I don't think he would be involved in this if he wasn't. That or maybe it was just the money aspect. Who knows? But regardless, a fun continuing saga there. But yeah. Like I said, when the match is around someone's ass being shoved in faces, you probably aren't expecting the most technical match. So I give this one a 4.5 out of 10. I can't look past that being the main focus of the match. So, again, another kind of thrown together tag match, and what wasn't a squash match, like I said, but wasn't super far from it. Finally, getting into the main event, which very much goes with that tagline of this WrestleMania, which has Mick Foley with Linda McMahon, Big Show with Shane McMahon, The Rock with Vince McMahon, and Triple H, your current WWE champion, defending that title against all three members in an elimination fatal four-way. Triple H obviously accompanied by his wife, the current women's champion in Stephanie McMahon. KP, this match has a lot, and I'm assuming will be one of the longer matches of this, if not the longest of this video. Let us know what you think about this one, and give us some of your pros and cons, then obviously your rating for this one. This match had a ton going on, and a surprisingly early exit from the Big Show. KP, what'd you make of it?
Yeah, it had a lot going on. Yeah, there was a lot to cover here in this one. It was obviously, billed as a very big main event, with four McMahons, being involved in their own separate corners, supporting each individual person. Yeah, it was always going to be one of those, long sort of drawn out sort of occasions. And it seemed to definitely go that way. So, yeah, the early stages, like you mentioned, Big Show getting eliminated quite early on. Rock gets the elimination here by Foley. He hits Show with a chair, which leads to Rock being able to sort of like capitalize. He hits a rock bottom. and that gets the first elimination of the matchup. Rock eliminates Big Show, and that sort of like kicks things off. So there's a pretty big gap between the elimination of Big Show and the next one. In that time, there's an announce table spot, which is a bit of a car crash. I watched this one a few times because I was, I think when I first watched it, I was shocked by it. I then watched it again, I was laughing at it. And then the third time I watched it, I was insanely, critiquing it, so I could sort of, just get some notes here about it. And so Foley actually goes for a dive onto the table on Rock, but he misses the table. He doesn't actually land on it. He sort of like lands against it, like sort of like on the side of it, sort of thing. So Triple H, he acts on the fly. He tries to put Rock through it, but he fails. The other table then collapses when Triple H gets back up onto it to try and sort of do something else. So that is a bit of a failure for him as well. And then Triple H gets up on the barricade eventually, just across from the fans, and Rock is clearly not ready to be put through the table. He's sort of like rotating at this point. He's like on his almost on his side, his shoulders up above him, and Triple H lands on him. It just looks extremely awkward, but this general just whole table situation was just an absolute mess. So I had to highlight that one because you have to sort of watch it really to see the state of it. It was absolutely god awful. But it was hella hilarious. It was extremely funny to watch. Triple H eventually gets an elimination then, after quite a long build up here, and he eliminates Mick Foley. So Triple H, he hits Foley with a chair to the head, and then pedigrees Foley onto that said chair in order to get that elimination. So now we're down to 2 men. It comes down to The Rock and Triple H. Shane McMahon, who was in the corner of Big Show, he returns and fights with Vince on the outside. Hits him with a monitor and the chair, which busts him open eventually. That leads to Vince McMahon being escorted to the back. So then a few minutes later, we do get Vince McMahon coming back down. He knocks Shane out of the ring, just eliminating him from the equation, basically, just completely solving his problems. But then he gets into the ring and, quite shocking fashion, I suppose, he hits Rock with a steel chair to the head. And obviously, Vince McMahon and Rock had been the two sort of like cooperating together here. That was the representative in the corner of Rock being Vince McMahon. But yeah, with a little bit of a turn there, he hits him with a chair to the head. Triple H goes for a cover, but Rock does kick out, to be fair to him. He gets out of the situation and he continues to fight. But it didn't last any longer than that because Vince would then hit him with a chair once again before Triple H would get the victory, straight afterwards. So Triple H pins The Rock. He holds on to his WWF championship and, would remain the champion at the end of the contest. So Rock would then get back into the ring post-match and he would not be happy at all. He would hit a rock bottom on both Shane and Vince McMahon. Before then, Stephanie gets up, into the ring and sort of like in the business of Rock. She slaps Rock, but then gets a rock bottom herself, as well as a people's elbow. The match was far too long. It was very, 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 very long. It dragged out for a large part. It was entertaining in parts, had plenty of drama. Twist at the end was quite interesting. But just generally speaking, that time when Big Show got eliminated and Foley got eliminated, that in between was just a hell of a long time frame. And yeah, it was just too long. Like I think they sort of like filled it with bits that just, if they had to fill time, and it definitely felt like that. It didn't feel like it was like, good content, but it was just more they were going through the motions. They were just doing this, that, and the other, and just trying to sort of like, eventually get to the finish. And yeah, I wasn't a particular fan of just the way it flowed at that particular point. You could have cut 15 minutes off this matchup, maybe 10, and it would have been probably a lot better for it. It would have been a better pace. But yeah, I think generally speaking, the finish as well was just a little bit, I don't know, it didn't feel quite right. Maybe it just wasn't well done. Maybe a bit underwhelming, I guess you could say. Just the chair shots and, just Triple H just pinning The Rock eventually. How long would that have gone on for if Rock kept kicking out? It would have just been up, hit with a chair, pin, up, hit with a chair, pin. I don't know. It just felt like a weird vibe. But Triple H winning, obviously, heel stuff there. People hated Triple H at this point, and you can see why. Getting with the McMahons and obviously Vince with his turn on his guy, The Rock. Obviously quite interesting there for sure. But yeah, I mean, I gave it a 7.5. So, it was interesting. It was fun. It was entertaining in parts. But yeah, just dragged a little bit for me. So I guess a little bit of a shame on that front. But generally speaking, not terrible. Like, it was a decent main event, but just had a bit too much going on for my liking, personally. Nick, what did you make of this one? Bit too much? What did you think of the time frame? Was it too long? And generally speaking, how did you find the match sort of like flowed and went down, and that finish as well? What did you make of it all? It's a bit of a big thing to unpack, really. This one.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the time frame because I did want to hit on that a bit. The match itself was 38 minutes, which in itself is a pretty long match. Obviously, there are four, main event talents here. Using the word main event there, take it or leave it, because it is the main event. But yeah, a Big Show's eliminated at 4 minutes 50 seconds. So, like we said, pretty quick, especially considering the match was 38 minutes. Definitely didn't have a huge part. And then it is not until the 19-minute 43-second mark that Mick Foley gets eliminated by Triple H. So, yeah, almost 15 minutes there. And then not until the 38-minute mark. So, another good 20 minutes before the match actually ends. On paper, this match should have worked with the McMahon in every corner. Very interesting concept. And it felt like somehow at the same time they didn't do enough with it, and at the same time they did too much with it. So I don't really know how to organize my thoughts on that. I think most of the involvement there being towards the end, and just kind of feeling like it wasn't to the levels of 15, just swerving nonstop and, feeling dizzy from it. But it wasn't super far removed from that. I don't think a lot of the card suffers from that, but I think this match definitely does. Yeah, unfortunately, this match, like I said, looked good on paper, just didn't play out, I think, the way they were wanting it to. And for this year, I think widely regarded as one of the better years in WWE wrestling, with a large amount of talent being called up. And a lot of the PLEs for this year are super held in super high regard. But for me, this main event and just kind of cap what I think was this Mania should have been better, provided the talent you had. And this main event kind of just alluding to all that. These, like you kind of said, there were fun parts in this, but just lasted probably twice as long as it needed to. I think you cut this down in half, or at least a third of it off, and I think you have a much better paced match, because pacing was definitely one of the bigger issues, and overbooked was the other. So it didn't need to be like when you actually had the wrestling going on, it was good. And I think that's the part of it I much prefer. But there were just too many other things going on. And so it felt like it kind of took away from what could have been a pretty good main event. So as for rating, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. But yeah, like I said, just the pacing and the swerving was just too much. And it felt like, obviously, we've seen Vince do things similar to this quite a bit. But yeah, this one was just kind of all over the place, unfortunately for me. Yeah, 7 out of 10. With that, WrestleMania 2000, WrestleMania 16, whatever you want to call it. That is the end of our match by match review. KP, if you could, per usual, give us your overall rating. And if you have a match of the night, please let us know what that is as well. And we'll get this one wrapped up.
Yeah, I mean, a roller coaster of a WrestleMania, I think is fair to say. There were a couple of high parts, and there were some low parts, and there were some bits in between that, just were a bit weird and wonderful, I guess you could say. Perhaps. Yeah, the highlight has to be obviously the tag team match, right? The ladder match. The Dudleys, the Hardys, Edge and Christian just absolutely killed it. Revolutionized tag team wrestling for the better, made it just, go to that next level. And did such a great job of doing so at the same time. This, the fact that this was the start of their their rise to this level of tag team wrestling was incredible, and yeah, set the precedents going forward. So we'll obviously talk about those coming up as well. But for now, take this one as it was. It was definitely the highlight of the show by a long way. But there were a couple of other decent matches in there as well. But just a shame that we did have probably one of, if not the worst WrestleMania match of all time. Involved in the mix here, and just generally speaking, some really odd and strange shenanigans from pretty much start to finish. So yeah, a main event that was just over, but just so crazy long, and you summed up really, really well with what you were saying about it, just general flow and the time, everything that went into that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, you could talk about it for ages. We sort of have done really in parts, but I think generally speaking, this one was one of the worst quality ones as far as my overall reflects. I give it a 5.5 as an average rating across all my matches put together. So yeah, a shame that we do get these ones. We have like this standout match, but unfortunately, the rest of the WrestleMania is a little bit sort of drab and just underperforming. So yeah, I feel bad for the Hardys, Edge, and Christian and the Dudleys, but unfortunately, this is the way it goes. More often than not. So yeah, 5.5, not great, but had some good moments for sure. Nick, what did you make of this one? Very up and down and very strange. Head turning, but at the same time, can't keep your eyes off of it. Sort of stuff going on. Yeah, highs, lows, just everything about it. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mentioned it a couple times throughout this video, but very much feel like we're trying to get out of the Attitude Era, but still kind of stuck in it. A lot of these matches just didn't feel Mania worthy. And on the other side of that coin, going from the TLC match to the cat fight has to be one of the biggest variances in terms of quality in Mania history. For myself personally, going from a 9 to a 1, just like that. Definitely a few topical moments, and outside of the TLC match and the ICEU match, um, just have yeah. You could probably say most of this Mania it just isn't kind of worth our time. The main event was good, but just had more issues than not. So for what that was, definitely far from the worst main event we've seen through 16. Well, I will say that. But in big picture things, it definitely wasn't the best of the night. So with that, I gave this one a 5.7 out of 10. Far better than 15. I'll say that. Definitely still has its issues. Obviously, being riddled with Attitude Era things like the cat fight. Just you can understand why it was being done. Maybe I guess maybe even that's up for debate. But clearly over with the fans. But in terms of quality wrestling and what we typically look for in a wrestling match, a far cry from it. So with that, WrestleMania 16, WrestleMania 2000 in the books. We will obviously next begin working on WrestleMania 17, which will be a nice palate cleanser, often referred to as one of the best WrestleManias of all time by many, many folks. So very much looking forward to that one, and looking forward to that discussion with UKP here on The Push. But if you disagree with anything we put out there or have anything else to add that you think we've missed, please let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button as well, as that helps us out tremendously. But for now, this has been The Push with Nick and KP. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care.